test if you can hear me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to this special edition of Let's Give It a Voice here at the Voice of Hope Media with AC Mbeng. If this is your first time here at the Voice of Hope Media, what do we do here? We empower, we educate, we inspire, and we give hope to individuals facing challenging and complex life issues, including special educational needs. So it's a safe space where we encourage people to speak up, to speak out, knowing that they will be heard and they won't be judged or stigmatized. So we also encourage people to speak about those societal issues most often regarded as too emotional, too taboo, or too sensitive to talk about. Today is a very special edition of Let's Give It a Voice here at the Voice of Hope Media. We just want to use this opportunity to welcome you because today is International Men's Day. Unfortunately, many did not know that such a day exists, but today is the 19th of November and it definitely exists. So we have a host of guests here from all over the world, from Cameroon, from Ghana, from Canada, from the US, in fact, all over the world. So you are all welcome. You are watching live on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. I am AC. I'm just here to introduce the show to you, and our host will be able to take over. So I'll hand you over to Cham and Festus, who are going to host this special event of the International Men's Day Virtual Community Outreach Summit. So over to you guys, and thank you once more for being here today. Over to you, Festus. You are mute. We can't hear you.
Great.
Okay. Cham, can you take over?
Hi, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this this conversation that we are hoping to have today. Um, it's going to be very informal yet very educating. Um, I will be joined as host by Festus, for whom you've seen already, and we have a big host of panelists to help us buttress this conversation and buttress this topic that we have before us. Today we are going to be discussing simply on the theme of this year's International Men's Day, and it's simply men's positive contribution to society. We shall be focusing on six thematic areas: community, childcare, marriage, family, health and well-being, and finances. We have great people here who are going to be having this conversation with us, so please stay tuned. Um, we have Mr. Williams, who is joining us. We have Dr. Nick. We have Mr. Rene Kejang, Chief Learning, Mr. Nginto, Dr. Attention Tale, and Dr. Bo Mike, who are going to be joining us have this conversation this evening. We welcome you again, and hopefully my co-host for is on now, and you have a couple of words from him, and then we'll dive straight into the conversation. Hope you have a wonderful evening and hope you enjoy it. Prepare with your questions as well, and drop them in the comment section as you watch, and stay tuned. Festus?
Oh,
Yes, we
Yes.
can hear you.
right. Well, sorry for that, ladies and gentlemen. We just had some technical issues. Really pleased and excited about this, the plethora of men that we have on this platform, the experiences, the exposure. One thing I've come to realize in life is you cannot discount the experience of anybody, be it what they've been through in life or what they've learned through the corridors of education. Either way, it is worth listening and it is worth sharing so that we can give it a voice to educate and to inspire. Such is the platform that we represent today. I'm also excited being part as being a man and being able to celebrate International Men's Day. And it's such, it's sometimes it's one of those days that people don't really remember because, like, hey, man, hey, nobody really pays attention and stuff. But for the few that actually had something, which is good. So I'm happy for this platform so that we can also put some spotlight on what men actually do and what they are about, some of the challenges that they face, and some of the advice we can give to some upcoming and younger generation that we have. So thank you all for tuning in. We are so excited to have you, and we hope that by the end of this session, we would have had a lot of things to learn and also to share. Thank you, and stay tuned as we continue with our program.
Over to you, Cham.
Uh, thank you very much, Festus. We're going to dive into the conversation straight away. So, before we go in, it's important to keep a couple of things in mind. Uh, Number one, according to the Mental Health Foundation here in the UK, there's a lot of statistics that we're going to be looking at, and we'll center our conversation around them. The first thing is nearly three-quarter of all adults who go missing are men. 87% of all rough sleepers, people who sleep roughly and who have health concerns as a result, are men. Men are three times as likely as women to become dependent on alcohol. Men are more likely to be compulsory detained for selected um, 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 particular crimes than women. And generally, also, men make up the vast majority of prison population. Um, Men, are twice as likely to be diagnosed with anxiety, you know, and all these statistics that come up. Three men are three times more likely to commit suicide than women. All of these statistics, combined with the little knowledge we have about the number of people who die in the war front and all that, compel us to think that it is time to have a conversation about the role or the positive contribution that men make in society. First of all, we'll talk about how men impact the community. Take note, we're going to be using a simple framework. We shall be talking about what is the role of men, what are the challenges they face, and how can we better the situation? How can we support men be better? And what can men do to be better? So the first thing we're going to be talking about is men's positive contribution in their community. And we'll call on Mr. Rene Kejang to tell us a little bit about that. He's going to take us in a couple of minutes, say 5 minutes or so. Just expatiate a little on that.
You are on mute.
Unmute.
Renee, you're muted.
Right.
Great.
Can you hear me now? Right.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for giving me the floor, Cham. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be part of this platform today and to share my experience with the rest of the community and the world. I'm Rene Kejang, as you rightly said before, and I'm the president of a men's community group here called Mademoiselle FC. And what we're going to discuss today is something that does affect quite a few men around us here, where we are in the UK. Where I come from, men are considered to be the breadwinners of the family. And I think every culture, every background too, as well, they do kind of have certain expectations for the men. Hence, when we grew up, we got to know that your father is the man. He's meant to be the strongest person in the family. He's meant to be the breadwinner. He's meant to be supportive. And everything that happens around your lifestyle, you run back to your dad and knowing that he's the strongest man around you. So that's the expectation they have for men. But on the other hand, there are a lot of challenges that we do go through as well. And, you know, if you see a man, sometimes he get out there, he's having too much to drink. It's not just because he loves drinking, but sometimes he wants to get away from some of those problems that he's facing at home. Now, in the community, we do help a lot of our community members to go through such challenges. So I will start by talking about a little bit about mental health. I know we all have mental health issues, but again, there is a certain level where if you go out beyond a certain level of mental health problems, then it becomes a problem. So we support each other in this community. And when I talk of mental health issues, it's not just when you go out there in the streets and you pick up uh, 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 rubbish in the streets. No, you know, we go through a lot at home as well. We go through a lot with our families, and we end up, you know, bottling it up and struggling with it on our own. Again, we grow up in a background where we don't speak out, you know, and when you happen to speak out or you approach a friend and say, hey, you know what, these are difficult. It might be financial challenges. It might be childcare challenges. It might be, you know, even your wife at home might be the problem. Even your job can be the problem. But again, you find it difficult approaching other friends or family members to explain that you're having a problem. And in that case, if you approach them, they think that you would think that you feel that they would think that, you know, you're being weak and you're not being manly. And that's something that really, um, that really kind of bring us down mentally, breaks us down mentally. So again, I'm here again to encourage men to speak out on things, challenges that they are facing as well. Now, as a community, like I said, and as the president of Mademoiselle FC, I've had friends, I've had uh, uh, members of the community who have called me and say, hey, bro, we're having this problem at home. Oh, bro, this is the challenge, this is the financial difficulties we are facing at home, or I can't afford for my rent. Now, how do we support men like that in the community? I have one or two members in this house who are part of that group, and sometimes we do a little bit of, you know, fun racing to kind of support those members. Sometimes just going to visit them, sit down with them, have a chat with them, does make a lot of a difference. So again, as men, you know, I know we're not what a lot of people think we are in terms of mental stability. But again, if you think that you're struggling, guys, I would encourage everyone, speak to somebody, speak to a friend, speak to a family member, and that would definitely go a long way to help as well. Another challenge that we as men out here, especially out here in the West, we face is the fact that the expectation, you know, especially those of us who come from that cultural background where there is a high expectation of us. If you cannot meet that expectation, you feel like you are weak. You feel like you are unable to meet up with the challenges that you have in or the expectations of your family. Hence, I will encourage men here, please, you know what? If you cannot, you cannot. Explain it to your family members. Tell them, look, I'm facing these challenges. I'm unable to meet up with the expectations that you guys have. And hence, some of them do understand a lot. So again, that does drive men into these mental health problems as well. But again, as a community, a lot of us are here to support. A lot of us are here to help. Sometimes it can just be that simple conversation, sitting down with your wife, having that conversation. And again, sometimes your wife may be expecting that you should be doing this. And you as the man, you think, you know what? Why will I have to sit down with a woman to talk about this? That's just being us men as we are. And the pride is in us. We're not ready to speak out that much. And again, have that conversation with your wife. Your wife can be just that supportive, but you don't kind of be able to pick it up because of that pride in you as a man. So again, I encourage all men out there as a community, please sit down if you're struggling in any aspect. It can be financial, like I said, it can be, childcare, it can be anything. It can be at work. Stress at work is another thing that we underestimate. So sit down, have the conversation with your family. They might just say a word or two that might make the difference. So again, I know I will be supporting or contributing on this platform as we go along. But again, I will give the floor back to the host, and I'm going to say a lot more as we go along.
Thank you, Rene. Thank you so much. I can pick on the fact that you're talking about, men should open up, men should talk, and especially with their spouse, wives at home, and to become more expressive. From the cultures you're talking about, from a cultural background, men are used to, when you show an emotional side, you're being classified as being weak. When you have concerns, because they tell you to, suck it up like a man, you have to stand up, and then we kind of keep a lot of things internally, and then it has. So picking up from there and moving forward, and I'm just going to continue this conversation and narrative with Dr. Michael Bowe, and just to find out from you in terms of marriage. Now, just linking that in with marriage, what are some of the challenges? Now, he just mentioned, Rene has just discussed that men should, try to speak up what we go through. We should not talk. Maybe your wife could be that support that you're looking for. Now, in terms of marriage, now, what are some of the challenges that men face in? I don't want to talk about those who are still knocking at the door to step in yet, but those who are already in, what are some of the challenges that they face? What are some of the support, or how can they even improve this marriage to become a healthy environment, and then to better not just the family house as it is, but also the community at large?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Stanford, and thank you, dear panelists. It's a great opportunity for me to be here to talk about this subject on Men's Day celebration. To be quite honest with you, I'm one of those people that only learned about the International Day of the Man just a couple of days ago. I really never paid much attention to that. Never even knew that there was a day like that. And I know that the focus about is about the positive contributions of men to society, to community, and the rest. And the big thing that jumps up in my mind immediately, and before I come to respond to what you said, Mr. Stanford, it's how can we celebrate any positive contribution when the woman is not there? And the question that I started asking myself from the very beginning was, well, why is Men's Day? Is it just because there was a Woman's Day? And I begin to realize that, okay, then I started looking up. I say, do we really have to celebrate a Man's Day? And who should be celebrating? Should other people be celebrating our positive contribution, or we should be celebrating ourselves? Mm-hmm. But in a way, I look back and focusing on what our brother said there, and looking back, I see there are a lot of things that we could look into ourselves, kind of self-examine ourselves and see how we can make a positive contribution to society. Speaking to marriage, like you said, I don't know what I'm the right person to talk about, but I want to give a big shout out to my dad, who was a great man. He is a great man, and to all my in-laws, who are great men, and to all those great men who are out there looking after their children and looking after their wives. I think that this is your day. We're celebrating you and continue to be a good example for the rest of people in your society. In marriage, it's a big thing. Just hooking up to what brother said there, Renee said there. I think that in marriage, there are a lot more challenges in marriage than we see, right? And I think a couple of us here are married, myself for a couple of years. But one of the things that makes it a little bit challenging to live in a marriage, so we see the good side of it, right? So go together in the family and then live together with a spouse and maybe have some children and all of that. But there is more to that, right? Raising children. Um, uh, uh, we different communities have this addressed differently, right? So the challenge that comes with being part of the family as a man, it depends on from your own cultural background. Some people have tend to, society has kind of tend to assign certain roles to women, and some women are kind of trying to fight back. And this is what has actually this is what actually led to that revolution of the women to talk about emancipation, and women are feeling suppressed. But I think that one of the biggest things that have brought this problem, so this is the result of this, as well as this such a challenge, is that lack of communication and succumbing to societal pressure. I take for instance, so we talk about there is a common saying. So if women sometimes often accuse the men of not being around, but at the same time, some of those women expect their men to be the breadwinners. So if you're the breadwinner, you cannot stay in the house, right? You have to be out there, look for the money to support the family. This means that you have to make that's good. There's going to be some sacrifice, right, in terms of the man's availability and to meet up with that kind of expectation from the woman as well. And then the woman wants to work because of the pressure. You know, this the woman's world now. They say we have to fight back. We have to work. I cannot just be a wife and stay in the house. I have to be contributing. I can also work my money and all of that. So it becomes, the big thing I said from the beginning is about communication, right? So there
Yeah.
has to be some kind of definition about who has to do what and what compromise the family is willing to make. And people should not just succumb to societal pressure. Society is kind of defining the way people should live in their families rather than families defining the way they should live. And this brings pressure not only to the two people who are married, the couple. Sometimes there's a spill over onto the children, which affects the well-being of the children as well, which is something that probably we're going to talk about. So I don't know whether this specifically addressed your concern, but we can elaborate on this topic.
Well, I think the main thing that you've just elaborated is that of communication, and we know how important communication in any walk of life. Being able to communicate, and it's not just a one-way street; it's also like a two-way street, so that communication flows. Sometimes understanding and response doesn't really work. Sometimes you have to really speak it out so that people can actually get a flow of what it is all about. Now, moving on to William. I don't know if you can hear me, William.
Yes, I can hear you. My name is William. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. So I would just like, what is your take on all of these topics and things that we are elaborating on? What's your take as a man? What are some of the challenges that you think we face as men in the society that we live?
What are some of the challenges we face as men in the society that we live? One of the challenges I would say is with the issue of celebrations. We do celebrate a lot around Mother's Day. We do celebrate a lot about women, which is quite good. But when it comes to men, we don't hear much about men being celebrated. We hear a lot about men being denigrated, being lambasted, being overlooked sometimes at best, I would say. Just like Dr. Michael said, I didn't know that there was an International Men's Day until a couple of days ago. Now, back to the issue of Women's Days and Mother's Days. Every time during Mother's Days is always garnished with flowers and hearts. We see adverts on the TV, gifts everywhere. But when it comes to Father's Days, we see
Yeah.
not too positive messages,
Mhm.
especially on social media. People saying things like "Happy birthday to all of those who are not deadbeat dads."
Mhm.
This is to the real men only.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, why is what is the this archetype of real men, and
Yes.
who defines it?
Absolutely.
It's I found it quite sad over the years. So I hardly ever celebrate Father's Day, for example. Apart from that, we face men face lots of challenges in different sectors of life. For example, men are overlooked in the health sector. Let's say I'm taking my daughter to the hospital. I've got three daughters. I've taken them to the hospital a number of times. The question I normally get asked is, "Where's mom today?" It's almost like I don't matter, and it's mom who is supposed to be bringing the child, and that's just not right. It's something that's supposed to be challenged. Also, there's little acknowledgement or support for health staff during antenatal appointments, causing us fathers to feel quite undervalued. And I don't believe there's enough training for health staff and health visitors with regards to men. Now, when it comes to the sector of education as well, let's say the early years, I worked for a number of years in the early years sector as a nursery teacher. And I can testify that poor pay and cultural expectation that the early years is not an option for men has created a barrier to the incorporation of men in the workforce. Now, adequate father involvement in nurseries that is on the par with mother's involvement is highly contingent on the representation of men in the early years sector, which means the more men working in the early years sector would translate into more fathers getting involved with their children at that age. But that is not the case because there are so many issues with regards to employing men in the early years sector. Um, Not just the poor pay, not just the expectation, but even the way men are treated in such settings. I've experienced some of these things firsthand. I'll move on to another thing that I believe it's a challenge for men: social work. I'm a trainee social worker, and the assumption that the father is absent or the absence of the father means that he's not involved is quite prevalent. Sorry. Um, Research has found that about there's no recorded information about fathers in about 20% of cases of child protection. The social workers are just not asking where are the fathers. As long as the mothers are in the house, everything is should be in order. No one has the, I'll say, wisdom to inquire about the father. Of course, there are some fathers who are aware of the house because of abuse and other things, but that's not the case all the time. Fathers are also important, and they must be acknowledged and recognized. Um,
Right.
yeah, I think I'm
Yeah,
talking too much, so I'll
thank you
catch.
very much. No, no, that's very interesting, and that's why we all got a little carried away by the very important statistics that you brought in there. And onlookers may argue that if you're present, nobody needs to ask about your whereabouts because presence means that we can literally see you. But thank God you're here, and we're going to come back to that, and you give us shed more light to that. But I
Okay.
first of all, I want to welcome Chief Lenin. Welcome, Lenin. Um, just to not to put you on the spot, but um, William already opened the door to men and health care. And
Cool.
I just, being a health professional yourself, I just what is it that you can add to the role, the challenges, the ways forward?
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Um, I think the biggest problem we have as men in terms of health is more of the awareness. And because we come from a culture where we are in denial of so many things, we we tend to neglect ourselves and deny the existence of men's health or mental issue. For example, men's health is not just the absence of a disease, a physical disease that you can have. There are so many things that can affect a man and which will go a long way in destroying them. So, for example, we have social well-being, emotional well-being, spiritual well-being, and mental well-being. So and these things are accessible, but the problem is we do not somehow get that education to be able to say, okay, it's time for me to go here and access these facilities, especially those of us who are lucky enough to be in a country like this where um, the social and health services are free at the point of delivery, but we are not making good use of. For example, a man could have some anxiety, some depression, but because we come from that culture where a man is a physically strong person,
Yeah.
is his iron made, so
Mhm.
therefore those things like emotional things, depression, they come with negative connotation, and by so doing they inhibit us from actually getting ourselves fit or treated. uh, Secondly, men are not very much free to expose certain things with their friends. For example, I might be suffering something and I'll just keep it to myself until perhaps it gets to a point where it cannot be redressed. Unlike women who are more proactive in this direction, where they have a lot of social skills, little groups where they communicate themselves and support one another. We tend to actually neglect that. But if I had to say some few things that men could just do, like keeping active. For example, we have this community that's led by President Rene, which is called Mado. I think it's a wonderful community because I've been a member of that community for quite some time now, and I've seen how it has supported the young men um, physically and emotionally, because especially during the lockdown, that was the only place where I could swear that I met other people and I could have a laugh or maybe share some of my worries. So we went there, we played football, and when you're physically healthy, to some extent, it helps to reduce some of the other anxieties or emotional stresses that we could get from home, either from our children, the environment, etc. So I think there's so many things that we can do. That's keeping active. Um, Try to be a real social being. Connect with other people. Also helps to keep your mental well-being in a good state. Also, you could learn new skills, because another thing that happens when your routine becomes so monotonous, or the things you do not inspire you, do not challenge you. Sometimes you tend to suffer from some kind of boredom, and boredom itself, if allowed to run for so long, brings some kind of mental problem or health issues. So that's one of the things. And also another way that you can help to mitigate some of the uh, things affecting men, you might join some spiritual groups like churches. They're very enlightening places. Sometimes I'm so down, but when I go to my church and then maybe sing a hymn or two, I come back a refreshed person. So those are some of the things that we can actually do to help us feel better. So men's health, don't think it's when you have perhaps malaria, typhoid, um, man flu, that's when you're ill. No, men's health involves other social aspects, starting from your home, your relationship with your wife. And yeah, so we need to look after ourselves and get a bit open and encourage ourselves. And if a man comes to you and says, "Hey, my brother, I have this problem," listen to it and try to see if you can point them to the right direction. It could be learning is not the place where you say go, but you could say, "We have Renee, we have Dr. Tale. Please speak to Dr. Tale, and they will put you in the right direction." And I think we need that awareness and being open. I think that would help resolve some of our issues.
That's
Great.
actually
Thank you
an
very
interesting
much,
point.
Lenny. Um, that's very interesting, really. I just want to bring in. He talked about the community and how men can belonging to this community can contact each other. I just want to um, bring in Dr. Tale, Dr. Attention Tale, into this conversation. We are mindful of the fact that most of the participants right now, we have a common background where we're coming from. And so this might be a little critical conversation that we need to have frankly, and that's the role, the challenges, and the way forward for men when it comes to childcare, especially as people from a background which is totally diverse from our current atmosphere. Can you expatiate a little on that, Dr. Tale?
Yeah, hi, and it's a pleasure being among, brilliant men and men who have given a lot to society, and it's also a pleasure to also meet Dr. Bo Mike, whom I've known for a long time as a senior brother. When I was just almost starting my academic career. First of all, when when I got the invite for this session, that's when I also became aware of a day to celebrate men. But it pushed me into some sort of a mode of self-reflection, and the idea of celebration. Sometimes I'm not really comfortable using that word, especially when a complex social phenomenon like being a man it's being squeezed into a single day, and we are expected to some sort of celebrate or undermine the everyday struggles and everyday successes of men. I don't think a day justifies an event like that. And unfortunately, the idea of celebrating also is sometimes misconstrued for drinking and merrymaking. But I think it should be a day for reflection, which we are doing now, fortunately. Reflecting on what struggles do we still have, how far do we have to go, and how far we have come. I mean, at the start of the session, you gave a couple of statistics, and it's the idea that men are not also a homogeneous group. And if you break down those statistics, you see that majority of those in the prisons of those committing suicide are those who have been minoritized in the society that we live in, whether black, Asian, and other minorities. And if I have to sum up everything that Renee, William, and Chief Learning have been saying, it's men struggling against three main vices, which is colonialism, the idea that people have been ordered, or people's ways of knowing and being in the world are usually seen in deficit terms as being poor or regressive or backward, and unacceptable. Capitalism, in the sense that our bodies and ways of being are also being commodified, involved. Just, I mean, everything is within the sphere of the market, and it pushes men also to be so much under pressure. And also this idea of patriarchy, that the man is expected to do and undo within the family. And those are the struggles that we battle with as men every day. And when it comes down to child care, it's, I mean, a child is a product of both genders, and you would assume that both genders should have equal responsibility to bringing up of a child. And the absence of a man, as William was saying, doesn't mean the absence of involvement in a child's life. People could be involved in various ways, and it's unfortunate that sometimes men are not being accounted for in their enormous contribution towards childbearing or child growth. And coming to the issues of nurturing children as well. You mean we I think it's cultural, and when we get into cultural debates, it becomes more complex because we have to dissect the way we think and the way we navigate the social worlds that we live in. William gave an example that he's not being called, men are not usually being asked for when it comes to childcare. I mean, I had a unique experience, which also showed that there is lack of this in society. When I just had my son recently, and I was called by a midwife, and they deliberately wanted to speak to the dad, and the midwife was very aware that this doesn't happen, and she could feel the shock in my voice. I was shocked, and I did not even know what to say, but it was overwhelming. It was comforting. It was nice, and she told me how to deal with my son when it comes to certain things, which was very helpful at the time. Societies do there are societies which are more masculine than others, and so we also have to appreciate these cultural variabilities and see how we as men continue to break down these barriers of patriarchy, which end up affecting us as men when it comes to childcare, childbearing, and the expectations behind these things as well. We'll discuss further as the debate goes, and I'm really delighted to be part of this exciting debate.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that contribution. It's been you've actually laid it out like a lecturer in the classroom and touched on so many other facets of life and community and society that everyone on this panel can, in one way or another, shape or form, associate with. And I think sometimes it's good when things move from the abstract into reality. So it helps a lot. Now, I'm going to bring a topic that I think we've talked on community, childcare, marriage, family, health and well-being, and all of that stuff. There is one that always will sit like the elephant in the room. Whether you talk about it or not, you will have to deal with it. And that is finances. It's about the financial part. And there have been so many songs being spoken. Now, the Bible could say that money answereth all things. You could get that part as well. No, money is central to stuff. Some in pidgin musicians will say, when you not get money, nobody could call you honey and stuff like that. So it shows that there's an element, whether you talk about it or not. Some would say, go for money, love will come, or go for love, then money. So there's that topic debate going on consciously or unconsciously. So this is going to be a thing that I would say, if each person, conscious of the time we have, could give us 2 minutes each. I'm going to choose the first person to go with. 2 minutes each on what you think the role money plays in the lives of men and how society attributes money and men. Okay, I don't know if that makes sense, but I think to me it makes sense. If not, you let me know and I can go over it again. So it's just talk about money and how society attributes that to men and the pressure that men also face because of this thing about, you have to be the breadwinner, you have to be the supplier. You cannot be a breadwinner if your hands are folded. You cannot be a breadwinner if your pockets are empty. So you have some pressure. Even when you're smiling, there's a tear that is in your heart. Okay, you carry this smile, you're walking around, but you're like, I can't provide for my family. Maybe I'm not yet a man, because a man is supposed to do blah, 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 and I'm not doing it. So that comes with its own pressure. So I'm just going to, without any much ado, now I'm just going to go with the first person. And it looks like Dr. Michael Bo. I don't know. You just have this thing that I have to go to you first. So 2 minutes,
Okay.
if you can throw some light on how you perceive this and how this actually works in your world.
Yeah, I don't know what. Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. I don't know what I'm right person to talk about money, because I don't have. This question you should be asking my wife, how she deals with me without finances, right? She's able to manage me without finances. Yeah, well, for sure. Money is part of the central thing in life. I think that I made a statement which actually I am going to read it fully how I got it yesterday. Where is that actually? I can't get it. But somebody said, I was just looking up something. Somebody said that if you are a real man and you are the breadwinner of the family, and you're sitting at home, there is something wrong. And if so, you've got to make yourself. If you're going to be the breadwinner, you're going to be out there making the money or winning the bread for the family.
Yep. Yep.
The question is always about how much money, how much money is required to make the family be a happy place.
Yes.
And we can say that our wants are really unlimited. We want everything, and the pressure now, we live in a society where there is it's called the consumerist society. We are consuming a lot. There are lots of other things, good things. So we want to drive the biggest car and all of that.
Hmm.
So how much money is really is it really enough? It's again something that I said. I go back to what should be defined by the family, what their needs are, and how they really want to approach that. The big challenge is when, again, I come back to this point, when there is no communication, right? Because no amount of money is enough. And usually, besides, we of course need the money to be able to get our children in good schools,
Yeah.
or get them an education, to pay the bills when they're in the hospital, to take care of house rents or pay for mortgage or whatever. Sometimes the problem is not actually that money. It's about the bar that we set, which is again the pressure of society. We want to live up to certain standards. Everybody wants to be comfortable, right? But the question is, what kind of comfort do we want? Again, who has to define that? I think that should be the prerogative of the family to define that. And when you leave that for society to define it to you, and you want to live up to some other people's expectation, you have the pressure, and money becomes a problem within the family. But it can never be enough, because the more we have, the more everybody likes to live in comfort, right? So you want to get more and more comfort, but how much comfort you need has to be defined by you, and how much money you actually need. But who has to win the bread? Again, it's the next question about money. Who brings the money to the house? The man or the woman? And so the woman says, oh, you're sitting back there. Or the woman says, I can also do this, right? So I can also go out there and make the money and help the family. Why are you leaving me to sit back here?
So do you think on that note, do you think it's something that they could have, like, communication and agreement as part of dating as well? Because some of these issues that don't need to pop up in marriage, where you can deal with them in the course of you dating to get married. Do you think it's some of those things that they could flesh out? Or
Definitely, that's the core. It's the core, right? It's so it starts from there. So it starts actually with dating. So if you're unable to define your needs from the beginning and what your expectations are by yourself, it's going to definitely come along the way. I think that one of the questions is always like, and it comes with trust, right? People have to build trust around how to manage this money, because sometimes it's not all about the availability of the money. And if you don't have proper communication, some of the things that you're not using the money properly, maybe you're spending it this way, or would have done it that way. Again, the only way to resolve this is by communication, defining your needs, defining how you want to approach them, and it has to be agreed. You have to be agreed on that in order to avoid any kind of tension.
Thank you for being honest and transparent on that part. And to link up and to continue, Renee, coming to you, what do you think?
Right. Festus, in my opinion, and as a community leader, like I said before, and Chief did say that earlier, I've been the president of Mademoiselle FC, and this is a group of more than 40 men who have come together to kind of support each other in the community. Nonetheless, I think when it comes to finances, my experience has been, openness, have the conversation. Don't think that because you are a man, you can authoritatively manage everything. I disagree with that. It works. In my experience, it works for me when I have that conversation.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do believe that women are better managers when it comes to finance. I know it doesn't work in every situation, but again, 75% of the women are better financial managers. So have that conversation. Don't struggle on your own. Talk to a friend as well. And again, these issues of finances do break up marriage. It breaks up families. And having that conversation would definitely open some doors. So I do agree with what Mr. Bo said there earlier, that don't just the fact that you just want to be a man will not help the situation. No, it would never help. So um, I will again. I had this conversation with one of our members who came to me about, it's not long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, he's overloaded his credit card, and he's been struggling to pay with it, to pay that while trying to live the life that his wife and the family are expecting him to live. And this was my advice to him. You know what your income is, you know what your wife's income is, you know what your household income is. Go back and have the conversation with your wife. And, at that point, you can be able to know how to better manage those finances. So let's stop this manly thing. I know it's a cultural thing as well. But again, let's have that open conversation.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Renee. And you have touched on two things there, which I'm going to come back to. Um, we can't leave this conversation without talking about two very critical aspects or elements that men are accused of on a daily basis. And that's number one, the issue of ego, and number two, general stereotypes about um, um, men and their relationship with their daughters in particular, and then their sons as well. But before I go to that, you mentioned something which is about openness, and it sounds like a great idea, and it is a great idea. However, an onlooker might be thinking right now, well, there is this common balance amongst women that his money is sweeter, you know, and so you still have that responsibility to once in a while surprise your lady. As open as you are, somehow there is that subconscious expectation that some money should come from somewhere for those little surprises, because mind you, they play a very big role in relationships, in marriages, and they have a way of turning a very quarrelsome week into a honey a beautiful kind of week. So I'll just call on William to tell us about, if he's in line with your ideology of the openness, how we can manage being open and yet meeting up to the expectations of, surprise me once in a while with some gifts. I mean, where does the money come from if we already budget everything and you already see? So William, over to you.
Hello. Yes, with regards to that, I believe we need to have the conversation with our spouses or our better halves, because if the money is not there, it's not there. You can't, you might end up surprising her, but the money might come from somewhere else, and you have to suffer the consequences later on. Um, it's all about cutting your coat according to your cloth, cutting your cloth according to your coat, or is it the other way around? Cutting your
Cutting
coat
your coat according to your size.
according to your size. Yeah, that's it. In society, we have lots of people going into debt because they want to um, impress someone, or because they want to live up to that expectation. If you're a man over here and you believe that you're being pressured into living up to some expectation, um, the only advice I'll give is don't stress, because you end up getting yourself into serious debt if you spend money you don't have to buy things you don't need to impress people you don't like. That's my advice.
Beautiful advice there, William. Thank you very much. Now let's go to what Renee, some of the issues Renee raised. He made a statement. He said, you know, let's just calm down and just have the conversation and forget about the stereotypes. And let's mention one of them here, which is ego. Ego. I want to talk. I want Dr. Attention to come in here. We have where do we draw the line between a man's ego and the work of our cultural upbringing, preserving our cultural identity as people from the African setting, where a man has a certain esteem that he's carried in, he's expected to be carried in, and so when this esteem is attacked, especially unruly, it becomes a fight not about what the point is or what the conversation is, but about how that particular esteem or that particular ego is being either robbed or I mean, you're the expert here. You tell us about how do you think men can um
I think we
handle
should we
this
should we
issue.
should we should be cautious about how we use the word culture, and we should be constructive and progressive about culture. If whatever activity or ritual or heroes that we celebrate, if they add value, then let's go for it. But if they do not add value into our ways of living, then I do not see why we have to keep on propagating that same so-called cultural or traditional activity. And we should not also confuse assertiveness with being egoistic or being assertive is something else. Being assertive is your ability, is a measure of your agreeability to be able to say no and stand by it. And ego is pride, and sometimes pride can be misleading in your judgments, in your interpretations of things, in how you relate, in how you converse, in how you engage with conversations that William and Renee has been talking about. So assertiveness and being egoistic are two different things. And I think men should be able to be assertive as much as women also have to be assertive when they are taking decisions. And you should be able to encourage informed decisions and how you arrived at being assertive. Um, and the idea of patriarchy, which I mentioned when I first spoke about, affects both men and women in different ways. There's an expectation, as you were saying, Cham, that men are supposed to provide and men are supposed to give gifts, and this is a societal or cultural expectation which may diminish the value of the family financially or morally or emotionally. And if you continue to propagate this kind of patriarchal way of thinking or kind of way of propagating men or the stereotypes around this way of men being the providers in the family, then you undermine what both of you are there for in a marriage. Is by having an open and transparent conversation and unlearning. Unlearning is not about forgetting your culture. It's about experiencing things in different ways and taking in different realities that you live within the family into your ways of being and knowing the world that you live in. So
Right.
we should be a little bit cautious about how we use culture. If it doesn't add value, then I don't see why we should propagate or maintain that particular culture. And we should not mix being egoistic with being assertive. Men and women should be assertive as well. Thank you.
I agree with you, Doc.
Definitely, and that's why I brought it up, so that ego is the word that is used, is thrown around to represent all of these things, and I'm happy that you have broken it down. People may still refer to it as ego, but like you've mentioned, it's just being assertive. And one of the reasons that somebody like the Professor Peterson propagates is that one of the explanations, just one of the many explanations of gender pay gaps, he says, is assertiveness. Men are more agreeable than women, and so they are better at bargaining more pay than women. And thank you for bringing that up, and for mentioning that it's not just for
But
men.
usually,
Women are
usually,
also
usually
encouraged.
these differences are in the fringes of society. I mean, among our
Mm,
peers, it's difficult to say an excess amount of adrenaline will make you more assertive than somebody who has less adrenaline. That has nothing to do with your brain. It's usually in the fringes of society that these things happen. It, it,
yeah,
it's a normal curve. If you understand
yeah.
what I'm saying, it's in the tail of this curve where you will see more is skewed more to men than women, but in the middle of the normal distribution, it's
It's
usually the same. Men and
identical.
is
It's
identical
identical.
between men and women. Yeah.
And those are they are the fringes that make the difference
Yeah, they are
generally.
the
But
fringes or the way the curve is skewed that makes a little bit of a difference. But in among our peers, I mean, if I call any of my friends who are girls, I think they'll be more assertive than I am. It's not because of I have a small dose of adrenaline that makes me more assertive.
a small
Any
dose of
shape or form.
adrenaline. Thank you very much. Now, Lenin, Chief Lenin, we're getting into the more interesting part. Still on in that line, what do you make of the contributions of men when it comes to their relationship, particularly with their daughters, and then with their sons, but particularly with their daughters? What do it is always held that a man, a male figure in the house is important, specifically for things like security and protection. What do you make of the relationship between men and their daughters? How can this be improved? How can this lead to a better society? How can this lead to better women and then their sons?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, thanks for that question. I think a family needs both parents, and a man has a very important role in the family. So, be it a son or a daughter, I think we are all supposed to be role models to both children. So, for example, if you have a daughter, you shouldn't expect that all the parental responsibility should be on your wife. You too have to contribute your bit to make the child a balanced person. Um, I would hate to say this. Um, it brings some element of bias, but I will have to say that children are social beings and they do a lot of learning in those early ages. And what they learn, they tend to carry on into their adulthood or into their marriages. So, for example, the way you would support your daughter, or the way a daughter who comes from a single parent and the challenges they have experienced, they might take it in anger when they get into marriage, and that might be a stumbling block or might create some unnecessary conflict if what they learned during their early ages and teenage age, um, they had a father who was a kind of role model who balanced the relationship and treated their mother properly. So I would advise men that if you have a daughter, know that she's learning and copying from you. If you're not treating the mom properly, that young lady you have in your home will get out with some aspect of vengeance, and they might even meet the best man, but because of what grudge they carry from the way you've been treating their mother, they want to throw it on somebody, and that might come back to either haunt them or destroy their marriage or make it an unhappy place for their children. So my advice is treat your daughter and your wife as if they were your children and wife as well, so that they grow in a loving family, and that they would learn something that they can carry on into the next family they get into. So sorry if I sound a bit like being biased there, but I think no parent should escape from being responsible to their daughter.
That's great. Dr. Michael, I just feel like you have something to add to this, how men should relate first with their daughters and then with their sons, because they say that a woman looks for in a man what she saw in the father most of the time. So can you just give us some light into that as well, and then
What can
Festus will take
what
over.
can I really add? Let me pick up with what Dr. Tale was saying there. What you mentioned earlier about ego before I come back to a question there. So there is this expectation about society, right, and about stereotypes.
Mm.
And some people feel that men should not cry. I can tell you, I'm one man that cried once I lost my aunt. I cried so loud that the whole village started calling me Wuludzene, which means the crying man. And so just to say that we shouldn't live by what society defined us to be. And I grieved my aunt because she was so close to me, and there was that affection. But I was so bottled up in that pain of losing her when I spent so much time with her, helping her, making sure that she was well, and she died when I wasn't expecting. So I held myself, but I broke loose, and I cried. It was not this cry that we say men cry and just see tear going out. I was screaming like I don't know. Now Asim Beng knows how our common women do cry, so I really was loud. But again, it's about this kind of stereotype, right? And also about how we feel and how society define what we should be like. Okay, coming back to what you're saying about the role of man in the family and all of that. I'm a father to two beautiful girls, and I have only girls. Not like there's anything wrong with them. I've never felt that I've not had enough of children because I don't have a male child. And this is part of the things too that society talks about, right? I've had people say, "Oh, just go for one more, and then you can have the man." I said, "Who told you that I'm looking for a man, for a boy, for instance? I'm not looking for any. I was looking for children." And I make children understand. I mean, a woman is a woman, a man is a man. Physiologically, we are different, but we have the same potentials. We have the same capabilities. Our roles could only be different in childbearing, and all those things. But I raise my girls to recognize that they have a full potential that every man has, and I treat them. Thank you, Mr. Lenin, for the point you made then. I be for my girls. I'm for my girls what I expect them to see in a man whom, if they choose to get married, they should be looking up to. So I'm trying to be that example of a man, of a husband figure, and as a father figure to my daughters, what they should be looking up to a man, because the only man they know around is me. I mean, my first daughter is 12 years old now, but the only man they've known in their life is me. So I'm there 24 hours, except in the time they go to school. So there is nothing that they're going to pick. They can pick up some things outside when they eventually grow and go big. But the first thing they're going to learn is from me, and I have that responsibility. If I screw it, they're going to get bad. It's not going. It's not going to look at them, but definitely I'm going to take full responsibility for that because I'm at that early stage of their formation. So I don't make them feel deficit. I didn't have a man. I just be myself, and I'm hoping that they're going to learn that there's no difference between being a man and being a woman, except from some physiology, but also about some kind of rules. But they can do any other thing. So the little girl likes to do karate and judo and all those things that the men that should be doing them. And yeah. So thank you.
Yeah,
That is
sorry, if I may jump in there for a sec. I mean, this idea of bringing up children and possibly they live that kind of a life that they see their parents living, and they tend to have this kind of reasoning the way their parents reason, and they take it on to their later life. I was talking to my boys here one day, and I said to them, "How many kids do you intend to have in the future?" And the little one, who is only 9 years old, said to me, "Daddy, I cannot beat the record. I'm going to have just 2 kids." And that goes down to exactly what we are saying here, what Lenin was saying, that they kind of a copy and paste of their parents. They kind of try to copy what they see their parents doing. So that's the point I wanted to make there.
Thank you so much. I think that is so true because they look up to you. You are the first thing they see and the last thing they see as well. So they kind of follow up, try to emulate, especially to be like, and they think, if I'm like my dad and, hey, I'm also like his favorite and stuff like that. So they tend to copy a lot of things. And now talking about all of these issues on stereotypes and egos and assertiveness. Now, William, coming to you. What do you make about these issues? How do you think it could be portrayed or interpreted by some, if not most or all men in the society?
I would like to say a few things about the word ego, because I grew up believing that it was synonymous to pride. However, um, I believe that ego and pride are two different things. If you look at the psychodynamic spectrum, we've got two different things. We've got the id and we've got the superego. Now, the id are your primal instincts. They are what make you want to eat, make what wants to make you have sex, make what wants to make you fight, and other things like that. And we've got on the other hand, we've got the superego. The superego is your moral compass and your moral imperatives, your religious beliefs, all the things that you believe are good. Now, the ego falls in between. The ego is what makes you you. The ego is yourself. So if you say that you want to get rid of the ego to become a better person, you might as well get rid of yourself. People who want to commit suicide, are tired of this world, do so because their ego is gone. Their self-worth is gone. Everybody has got ego. Men has got ego. Women have got ego. Everyone who has breath in their lives have got ego. So ego is actually a positive thing, but it has to be nurtured. It has to be understood. Otherwise, it will get in the way. That's my take on this stereotype.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Doctor, you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, William, for expanding on the psychoanalytics of ego. I mean, ego is a Latin word for I, and I is in relation to society. But the way ego was framed, or ego is being framed in society today, is an interpretation of pride and
Pride.
Which, as you say, is an issue of educating and learning what the self means in relation to society, or what the self means in connection with the other in society, and how you can navigate as you move along society, being your own self and being your own person. And thank you, William, for expanding on that more psychologically.
And on that front, all of this being brought to light, I hope some of us, even our viewers, thank you for watching. I hope some of you are taking notes, or if you have questions, you can please feel free to ask them. And if members of our panel are available and keen to answer, they'll pick on it, but we'll do our best to respond to them. But because we have some of these things being thrown at, it's not just for because we lack things to do. It's because the platform is there to educate, to inspire, also that we all learn, and then we grow together and improve and get better as a society as we navigate. Now, there's an element again being touched upon and being thrown subconsciously. As men, you are mostly told to be yourself. And the question now is, how can you be yourself when you don't know yourself? So I think it ties in with the ego issue. So I'm just trying to break this down a little bit. The role of men, being able to also accept who you are as a person, as an individual, knowing that you are unique in your ways. You don't have to be like another person in order to be influential. And then at the same time, people are telling you to be yourself, but you've been trying to be yourself all along. But how can you, on the other side of that coin, be yourself when you don't even know yourself? I don't know if this makes sense, though. And my favorite person to go to, Dr. Mike, I'm going to start with you. Sorry. But this is something I'm sure you've also experienced it. I think for most of us men here growing up, right? You're growing up, and when you're still trying to navigate, you're trying to find who you really are. People are telling you, why don't you just be yourself? But you've never heard anybody tell you maybe who you are. Maybe
or be a man. Be a man.
Be a man. Be a man. No, touch it yet. Be a man. And you're wondering, like, what does it even mean? What does it look like? I don't know if you get it. So what does this really mean? And how can you be yourself when you don't even know yourself? What are some of the things society could ever help you to be yourself?
Dr. Bo, man up.
Man up.
Yes, exactly. So you say you man up and face it. So yeah, this comes back to what we're saying, and this is actually central to the theme. I like that we have been talking around the same issue. This is about expectation,
right?
So people feel that they say you should be yourself because they're expecting that you cannot be able to, that you suck it up and be a man up. How do you man up? How do you man up? It's like you don't.
Is it by walking like this, or
So it's not having some beard or what that makes you. makes you a man. I think that being yourself, if I were going to put it the other way, actual fact that person, and sometimes they say when they actually mean that you should just absorb it and just stay, but it shouldn't be like that. It should actually be that you should recognize what your potentials are, what your limitations are. Very often we do not do that. We do not, we kind of, that be yourself, man up, is that you live some other person's expectation, right? So you live up to what society has said, what the person expects of you. Why are you crying? For instance, I'll talk about crying here. Right? Why are you crying?
Yes. Yeah.
Man up, man up. Come on, men should be crying.
Take the challenge.
Yeah, and I can tell you about, so talking about Men's Day and Women's Day, we've talked about one of the issues and one of the things that Cham said there from the beginning was talking about men are in prison, men do drugs, men drink, and all of that, and men are violent, and I was reading off some statistics about 80% of women suffer from domestic violence, right? Intimate relationship, intimate partner violence, and kind of thing back at home. And so 20% of the men also experience that, right? So 80% of women, 20% of men, so to say, about that in that statistics. But and hardly do you hear men speak out. So there are men that also suffer violence in their houses, right? But they don't talk about it. And this violence is not always physical; it's emotional. It can be emotional. It can be psychological. And this takes a big toll. So why do men not speak about it? They don't speak about it. I'm not a health expert, but I think that once we recognize our vulnerabilities, when we recognize that we too are weak and we suffer some form of violence and speak about it, ask for help. Brother Rene was talking about there, or seek for help from experts, from really people who are experts. Talk about it to our friends, but also talk about it to really experts and sit down, listen to them. It could be very, very, very helpful. So manning up is not just covering it up and then just trying to prove tough. In actual fact, what makes people to try to prove, what destroys a lot of relationships and families is when people try to leave what is not there. They try to man up, and that manning up in itself means that they want to make believe what they actually are not and what they're not capable of doing. And I still believe strongly that it is through communication and through really accepting that you are vulnerable and asking for real help that you can come out of this kind of a situation.
Right. I think that is really, really a good and an in-depth explanation as to some of the things. Now, just to add another side to this argument, Chief Big Brother Learning, what do you make of this? Being yourself, sometimes when you don't even know yourself, and society expects you to be yourself. How do you approach this? How do you, as a man in this society, I would say, overcome it? Or what are some of the ways you could get over it?
Well, thank you for this chance, Festus. Be yourself. The first thing I would like to look at is if you don't know yourself, and you can never be yourself. So there's a crisis there. So the first thing is, if you've misplaced yourself, you have to retrace your path and identify who you are. When you've successfully identified who you are, then you can now say, okay, this is me. I'm being myself. But if you do not know who you are, then you are in serious crisis, and I think you need help.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, but lucky enough, all the panelists here, I know them personally, and they're all themselves. So that's a very good thing. Second, man up is don't live like the Joneses.
Yeah.
Don't live by expectation. Define what is within your own remit or what you can comfortably manage. We are in a very complex society where there are other things that are putting a lot of pressure on us, and you don't want to bring in artificial pressures, which goes back to might affect men's health and cause emotional or things like anxiety or depression, etc. So for me, and the advice I would give any young man is, be what you are. We're all unique. and God created you for a purpose. Going back to things like in the marriage, if you're yourself and you can communicate properly to your spouse, she will get to understand your personality and you guys would adapt the way that fits you. But if you're not being yourself, you're living a false life. And that means by the time she tries to understand who you are in this personality A, and you're moving down to personality B, there's been a shift, and that creates a lot of conflict. And by the time she tries to know personality B, you're already in C, and she will lose trust. She will not know which personality or who are you really, because you're A, B, C. So my general advice is be yourself and do not be pulled by the crowd.
That's
And
great.
Can I just add something to that?
Oh yes, doctor. Yeah, come in.
Yeah, of
Yes,
course.
I mean, yes. The idea of being yourself. I mean, there is no problem in feeling lost sometimes, because it's part of the experience of living.
Discovery.
Sometimes it's a progressive realization of self. You
Yes.
progressively realize who you are, and there are periods when you'll be lost, and that is why you have people to talk to in society. That's why you have therapy. That's why you have religious societies. That's why we have Mado to go to and talk to people. You are learning in the process, and you're also unlearning. You're experiencing things differently, and it's not in a place of you it's not bad being in this stage of discovery. That's what I mean. I mean, it's part of daily living, it's part of daily struggle.
Yeah.
But if you feel that it's taking a toll on your mental health,
Mm-hmm.
you're not the only one. Men
Yep.
go through those phases,
Mm-hmm.
women go through those phases. Is there are phases of life. That's what makes life itself. Seek help, talk to somebody.
Yep.
And when somebody says be a man, usually that question comes from be strong.
Mm-hmm.
But being weak also is a sign of strength.
Mm-hmm.
Exposing your
Yeah.
vulnerabilities is also a sign of strength. Dr. Bo was talking of how he cried when he lost his aunt,
Yep.
and that is strength. That is. I mean, that is
Um,
sending out all of that emotion, and emotion is a reason for you to pursue greater things, and that is what pushes you to go further to find greater things. So being a man doesn't only mean strong in this sense. It also means
yeah.
exposing your vulnerabilities and discovering who you really are. And
Yeah.
and it's a journey. It's a progressive realization of self that everybody goes through as a human being.
Um,
Yeah,
Feel free,
doctor,
doctor.
if I could come in, I mean, you made one important point about seeking help, because you cannot permanently live in a discovery state or in a state of no identity. That would lead into crisis as well. So
chaos. Yeah.
that point you raised, mentioned about seeking help and vulnerability would enable someone to support, or for you to be able to ask for some support. So I think it's a wonderful point. Yeah. So let's not take vulnerability as uh, a negative thing.
I think, sorry, when we started this conversation, I think I did mention the fact that speak to someone, speak to a friend, speak to a colleague, talk to your family, speak to your wife. The statistics that you did talk about before, men getting involved in, crime, being violent, getting involved in drugs and things like that. You know, I think the cultural aspect of it does come into play here as well. It's not in our culture to seek for counseling. It's not in our culture to seek for therapy or to go into these religious societies and seek for help. Hence, I think that's where the educative part of it should come in, where especially some of us who are lucky to be here in the West, where we have some of these services that we can kind of, explore, get into it and seek for real help, professional help, I would say. So it's important that we seize this opportunity, get that expertise, and seek for help. Uh, Lennon was saying that, Chief Dare was saying that if you don't know yourself, then there's something not right there. You know what? I would disagree with that, because there are a lot of us who still can't identify what we are. Why do I say that? It's because you tend to just get along with your life, and the community or the people around you tend to complain about every single thing you do. And then you start to think, what is wrong with me? Why is it that, I kick the ball and they say, oh, why did you give that pass? Why is it that I turn the car and they say, oh, that was the wrong turn?
Such a bad
Why is
driver.
it, you know what I'm saying? So again, you turn to question your own self and your own behavior, your own approach, and
Yeah.
you think, you don't know yourself. What is it that you are doing that is not right in your community? Or you get home and you say, hey, son, can I have a glass of water? And your wife turn around and say, why don't you get it yourself? You think, don't you know yourself? Don't you know your own son? Can your son not give you that glass of water? So
Yeah.
again, Chief, yeah, I do understand where you're coming from. But on the other hand, please, what I'm trying to say here is, in order for us to understand ourselves, to know ourselves, we need to seek for that professional help, and we need to talk to people, to the people around us, so that, again, out of that conversation, we can get to know who we are, if that does make some sense.
Yes. So, guys, thank you so much for this. We're just trying to manage the time and everything. We have some questions that will be coming in from our audience out there watching. Thank you, guys, for the questions you keep sending, and then we will really get into them. And on that note, like just talking about all of this, knowing yourself and being able to stay in your lane and all of this stuff, it boils down to things like identity. And we know that in society you cannot fake another person's identity. It's criminal. Right. So that should be the same thing with us growing up. You cannot afford to have another person's identity. If the police stop you and they ask for your ID, you cannot present another person's ID. You have to present who you are as part of your identification process. So with this mindset, it's going to help a lot of people. I'm happy that we've talked about reaching out for help. Talk to some people, people who can help you. Try to be progressive, as Doctor said, be progressive in a way of thinking and way of approach, because life sometimes gets really hard. Life sometimes you will not always meet good, nice, encouraging people. You will get mean, degrading, discouraging people in life. People will throw things in your way. But then it boils down to the point where you need to be able to surround yourself with people, or know some people, or be able to cry or reach out for help. I cried, Dr. Mike. Listen, I know I'm tough. Some emotions don't really come out. But listen, I cry. Okay. Yeah, you because you need to let it out sometimes, even if you don't want anybody to know. It's okay to cry. Don't fake this thing. Let it out. Let it out. It's okay. That is part of you being a man. Society should not define when and how you shed tears, when and how you show emotions. It shouldn't be defined. That 14th of February. If you go along the street, it's like if you're not doing something on that day, there's something definitely wrong with you. Right? But how many days do we have in a year? You see, those are some of the things. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, by the way. Nobody should put me in that. I'm just saying that it shouldn't be defined by just that element. Okay. So now the questions that are coming in from our sister Sanke says, to strive as a family, don't you think men should consider their partners as if it were a partnership in business? I would go with
Again, I'm sure I can talk.
Let's go.
So
Yes.
definitely, I mean, when you go into business, the first thing that brings you into business is trust, right? You can't do business with anybody you don't trust. So if that it should just be a given, right? Once you get a partner, so now she said she put it in a way. It says partner, so it's not defining whether it's male or female partner. So I'm very cautious about this. But a partner, definitely, when you're going to get a partner, is because it's somebody you trust, right? So in the same way, if you're going to business, it's because you trust somebody to do business with that person. So absolutely,
men should treat their own person as a partner. But again, there's a little bit difference there. There is that partnership that is built on trust, that's about trust, but there's an emotional attachment,
Yeah.
which in business there is not there's no emotional that's attached to it. So it's good to not to, if you're going to treat a partner just as a business partner, as a partnership in business, well, there may be things that will not really go so well. So you have to consider that while that trust aspect exists in both kind of partnerships, there is an emotion that is attached to one, which is something you have to nurture and take care of in a special way.
Yep.
Great. Thank you very much for that response. First of all, we have to be conscious. We have a limited time, and we want to enjoy it as much as possible. And there is another question on that has been raised by one of our viewers, which is, how has men, or how has the Western society impacted on us or on you as African men within a family setting in the West? How has the Western society impacted on you? Just somebody volunteer your experience in 2 minutes, and then we can go on to the next thing. There
All
is
right.
one issue that is really pending that I would like us to trash before we leave.
Okay. Can I get started on that one?
Great.
Yes. I'll say that with regards to the upbringing of my children, there's been some challenges in that they do learn some behaviors which are not exactly acceptable in our African culture, and I've either had to adjust my mindset to give them some freedom, or intervene and step in depending on the seriousness of the issue. Also, another way in which the Western society has impacted on my fatherhood is the liberal model of parenthood,
Right.
whereas both my wife and I have equal responsibility.
Hmm.
We share the chores, we keep the children, we have equal childcare responsibilities, and I don't feel under pressure if she earns much more than myself. It would have been a lot worse if we were in the African context, because I would have been drenched in shame. But
Yeah.
over here, I know that it's like it's been normalized that
Hmm.
a man can earn more or less sometimes. Sometimes my income goes up, sometimes it comes down.
Goes down.
It is fine. It's fine. I don't have to stress over it. So that's one of
Hmm.
the ways that the Western culture has impacted on my fatherhood.
Mm.
Yeah, William, thank you. If I can just jump into add the, I mean, the Western world has some good values as well as Africa. I think the best way is to bring that together and mix them, and then you have perhaps the best of two worlds. But the most important thing in terms of family life or parenting is that the Western world has made us closer to our children, unlike when we were growing up, when our parents would come back either from the farm or from work at 3:30, have lunch, and the next minute you see they're in a bar, or they don't really interact with you. So all the interactions you get is, hey, get up and clean the compound. Um, have you done this? So it's orders, and you don't have a place of expression. And I think one of the joy is seeing your children grow up with you. My second daughter was delivered when we had some challenges, and I was mostly at home. And she grew with me in those early ages, and that has gave us a wonderful bond. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And every person who would say father in the West should thank God for that parental bonding that our parents, maybe fathers, did not have with us. Our parents were, when they get in this, there's some echoing. Yeah, when they got him through this door, we had to flee through the other door. So I think that's one
Great.
thing I would say is
That's a
good.
very important point you've made. Because just recently, my dad sent me a video of an influencer, social media influencer, saying something about be a man, don't kill plenty people. And I'm like, see who is sending me this video? Someone who brought me up as a be a man kind of model. But again, we are excited that we have reached a stage in our livelihood where even our parents, to be honest, are realizing that the pressures are getting too much. And so they're trying to, I mean, the tree has grown. It's really difficult to straighten the branch right now, but that effort really gave me a lot of peace. It also reminds me of a conversation that I had with Dr. Tale, where we realized that kids nowadays have stronger opinions than we did when we were growing.
Yeah.
Our opinions were based on mom's yes or mom's no.
Mhm.
But today, the kid has their own yes and they have their own no. So Tale made a statement, not just for grow with these people like saying our tenants when they reach 18 or 21, they step out, like tenants we know they pay rent. and it's a reflection of our society today. But the thing I wanted to touch on before we go, and that's if there's no other question from the audience, is institutions. We have spoken from a personal point of view, from a community point of view. I want us to talk about institutions. 80% of men who are incarcerated before 18 grew up without a father. 80% of alimony laws are biased towards women. The National Cancer Institute spends 700 million on breast cancer and spends 250 million on prostate cancer. And the impact of this disease are somewhat is more critical for prostate. This reveals to us, I don't want to get into the politics of whether it's intentional or not, but this reveals to us that institutionally speaking, men have to advocate for more to catch up somewhat. I don't know if someone can tell us how men can bring themselves into policy, especially healthcare oriented, justice, law and justice, and things like that. How can men bring themselves into policy to ensure that some of these things that we are sweeping under the table can come up and we can have a conversation about them? Tale, do you want to say something?
Yeah, let me just say something. First, I'll just go back to the previous statement about African men in Western societies, and I think we should also appreciate as African men this dual consciousness that we have of being African and living in a Western society where you are expected to be both Western and African at the same time, and it's important that we appreciate how much skillful we are in navigating these both worlds at the same time. And we should take it like a plus, really. When you come home and you're expected to be the African dad at home, and when you step into society, you're supposed to exercise your parenthood within Western confines and Western norms. And this duality that we as African men are able to go about our daily lives and our daily struggle is really something that must be lauded and appreciated. And talking about institutions, I think maybe it'll be important to also know the prevalence of those both cancers. Maybe breast cancer is more prevalent than prostate cancer, and therefore there is more focus on breast cancer than prostate cancer. What are the figures behind that statistic? It will be interesting to know before making any informed analysis on that. But bringing in men in, I think, is by having these kind of discussions, creating platforms and spaces for men to discuss. Mado is a society, the society or the group which Rene is president. It's a society by men but not of men. It's a society by men but of their families. So in that space we discuss about family issues, we discuss about our women, our children, and things like that. And it's by having this discussion that you begin to push these things into the spotlight more. I cannot really comment on the statistics figure, but because I need to know the prevalence of both kinds of cancers before commenting.
Just so that we have a context, So I'll just, like, for example, the Yorkshire Cancer Research, based here in the UK, um, it doesn't talk about the prevalence, but it talks about the number of deaths. And so, for example, in the year 2015, 11,800 plus men died from prostate cancer, and in that same year, 11,400 women died from breast cancer. So it's kind of identical in terms of the death rate, and slightly more for men, but this is our focus. It's not trying to be competitive. It's trying to see that we can push the conversation and push for institutions and policies to represent the issues that men face, minding also the fact that men are not as expressive. Whether that's a good thing or not is
Yes.
another conversation entirely. But should institutions do more, William?
I believe that institutions should do a lot more. It's true that men are not that expressive. We've got this stiff upper lip culture, whereas whenever we have a problem, we fail to speak out. But until we speak out, until we have that conversation on a parliamentarian level, on a parliamentary level, I would say, not much is going to be done about it, because it's the government that has got the funding, the government that has got the power to release that funding. And until we get to that stage, there's not much we can do. So I would advise that we become advocates. We send in petitions to get our points across. Women are always checking their breasts to see whether there's a lump. There's this awareness. But how many times have you heard of men doing that with testicular cancer or prostate cancer? We hardly ever hear of that. It might be there, but it's not really out in the open. Yes, so we need to have that conversation out there. That's my take on that. You're muted, Cham.
Oh, sorry.
I will agree with William there, if I might join in there. And unfortunately, let me just drag you back a little bit to the previous point that you brought up, and that was regarding the question our guest or uh, somebody raised on the program, one of our viewers. You see, having this conversation again is important. And I will agree with William that we don't speak out a lot. And being able to speak about our problems is very important. It can actually influence the policies, like you did mention there. You don't have to be ill to go and see your doctor. Sometimes they do write to us, those of us who are privileged to be out here, and they will write to you that, look, you do, for especially for those who have gone past 40, they send you that letter on a yearly basis or every 3 years or so to come in for checkup. But again, I would encourage everyone to say, look, at least a couple of times a year, visit your doctor, you know, have that checkup. And that might just influence the statistics as well. That might as well raise the awareness as well, because once you influence the statistics, the doctors are able to again pass it across to the lawmakers as well, and that will influence the budget for the research as well. So please, men out there should be able to, get. I think for us, from our cultural background, again, it is pride for us that, oh boys, I've not seen my doctor for the last 3 years. I've been okay. To me, personally, I don't think that's okay. I don't believe in that. I don't agree with that, because by the time you approach your doctor, if you had a problem, it's probably gone to a level where it cannot be managed again. So, again, in order to influence the policies, let's start from the basics. And the basics will be: speak out, visit your doctor. If that problem is there, they will pick it up at an early stage, and they will, again, that will influence the statistics, and it will eventually influence the policy makers as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rene. Festus, I'm conscious that we are 10 minutes past our, our time, and if we can just bring this to a landing, so that we all can retreat for the evening.
I think personally, it's been one of those moments in life where you wish you could have a repeat moment of it, but you can never have the same session happening again because ideas will be different. But again, it's just an honor to be part of this session, to be part of this day, to listen to the views being shared, the opinions given, and some facts shared as well, which is not just for us to just feel comfortable and rest on our laurels, but one where we can take into society on a daily living and also make sure that society progresses as we as human and men as well, and also take the lead for this and also to celebrate today. And may I just take this moment to just thank you all for being men. um, I know you did not ask to be man, but you are one, and you are doing a brilliant job. The ideas being shared and everything. It's an honor and a privilege to have men like you in society as well. And with one comes many, and I think we are more than one. So we know this can propel and like have some cadence and also into society that we live in, cascading such a way that we could all learn. And we should not take these moments for granted because these are the moments that men, when men sit and discuss and open up, you know that there is healing about to happen because we usually, by nature, by default, we are not like this. So when we start talking about issues like this, real men listen, real men know that somebody is reaching out. So this is something that I don't take it lightly. And as we are about to close, I'm just going to say thank you to Renee, thank you to William, thank you to Doc Michael, Dr. Ating Chong, and thank you to, I cannot miss everybody. No, I'm a co-host Cham and the one and only Asim Beng. I thank you guys so much for this moment and for having us and for having me. May God bless you and may God keep you real good. Cham, over to
Thank
you.
you very much. Thank you very much, Festus. Thank you, Asim Bank. Thank you to all the panelists for your very valuable contributions. And I hope that it doesn't end here. William, I go with one of your last words. We keep advocating, we keep petitioning, be it
Yes.
parliament, be it our peers, be it our family, our home, our children, our wives. Let's begin to challenge the stereotypes. Let's begin to challenge the status quo. Let's begin to put the well-being of men at the forefront so that society can be built better for us all. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone,
Thank you.
and have a good evening.